The United Nations has condemned the normalization of what it described as the unacceptable level of violence against humanitarian workers around the world. In a statement released to mark World Humanitarian Day, the UN's Human Rights Agency said 2023 had been the deadliest year on record for aid workers, with 280 killed in 33 countries.
Humanitarian operations coordinated by the United Nations provided life-saving aid to more than 140 million people last year. Aid workers, mostly national staff serving their own communities, persevered despite brutal violence. They continued their efforts to overcome all obstacles to supporting people in need in the face of severe funding shortages. On World Humanitarian Day, we once again salute their courage, their determination and their service to humanity. And we recognize that honoring aid workers is not enough. 2023 was the deadliest year on record for humanitarian personnel. In Gaza, in Sudan and many other places, humanitarian workers are being attacked, killed, injured and abducted alongside the civilians they support. Disinformation campaigns spread lies that cost lives. International humanitarian law, the law that protects civilians during wartime, is being ignored and trampled. A climate of impunity means perpetrators do not fear justice. This is a failure of humanity, responsibility and leadership. On World Humanitarian Day, we demand an end to attacks on humanitarians and on all civilians. We demand that governments put pressure on all parties to conflict to protect civilians. We demand an end to arms transfers to armies and groups that violate international law. We demand an end to impunity so that perpetrators face justice. Celebrating humanitarians is not enough. We must all do more to protect and safeguard our common humanity.
That's the UN Secretary General there, Antonio Guterres. Well, my next guest knows all about the dangers faced by humanitarian workers in conflict zones. Maulid Wafa is a senior emergency specialist with UNICEF and is part of the agency's emergency response team who go wherever they're needed most. He's recently returned from the border of Sudan and South Sudan and was in Gaza earlier this year. And Mr. Wafa joins me now on the line from Istanbul. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. The UN there, of course, condemning what it called the unacceptable level of violence against humanitarian workers around the world. You are an aid worker who's gone everywhere from Gaza to Somalia and Sudan. I mean, how dangerous was it for you?
No, thank you very much for this. And I'm very glad today, the World Humanitarian Day, we're having this discussion. Really, the interest you've shown to discuss this means a lot to many thousands of aid workers that are today having difficulties to stay safe and to stay warm and to deliver badly needed humanitarian assistance. To your question, being an aid worker is first of all an honor. It's an honor that no matter how difficult and how painful it is, that you cannot measure the feelings that many of us have, despite the death, despite the arrest, despite the detention, and despite all the difficulties you go through as an aid worker myself, working for UNICEF and working for children. Anytime I go and spend time with children in some of the most difficult situations, I feel honored and I touch my heart and say, thank God, at least we are there to spend time with the children and look at their eyes and feel the pain they are going through. So it's not about the aid workers themselves, but it's also what they are standing for, which is the humanity itself.
Well, absolutely. And we respect and congratulate people like yourself who, in the face of everything, I mean, I was reading that you've been ambushed, you've been kidnapped, you've been shot at. Several of your aid worker colleagues have been killed or abducted. I mean, that sounds absolutely horrendous. So we do congratulate you for keeping on with that humanitarian aid work. But where would you say is the most dangerous place to be in 2024 for an aid work?
No, absolutely. It's an evolution, and it's a situation that is keep on changing and going through up and downs. I had joined the humanitarian field in 1993, and even though the situation by then was very painful and very difficult, the threat and the risk aid workers used to go through was slightly different than what we go through. I worked in Somalia in 1993 when the famine was a reality in Somalia, and militias and checkpoints were the biggest threat that we are dealing with. Since 9/11, the types of threat that aid workers go through has changed, and it became immensely challenging to have access to many areas that we normally used to go through. The emergence of many faith-based non-state entities and the war on terror has also made the aid workers' life extremely difficult. It goes on and on and on. And also the recently surging conflicts and wars that are happening is also becoming another increasingly challenging security threat to aid workers. And as Secretary General highlighted, 2023 was one of the deadliest years for aid workers, and 280 aid workers were killed in 33 countries, as he rightly say. Countries is still going through war, but imagine if you're talking about 280 aid workers killed, how many civilians died in these wars? How many children have their schools destroyed by the war? How many children have their health facilities destroyed by the war? And I think it's a challenge. I personally grew up in a refugee camp and was displaced from my country by war itself. And I think it's very sad at this age, 56 years age, I'm still seeing the same situation back and forth.
Right.
Aid workers dying.
I really do apologize for interrupting you, but we have to move on because time is running out. I mean, I wonder, you've been in Sudan. We heard that there's a deal that's been reached to open aid corridors there. How much difference is it likely to make now that, in theory, aid corridors are open? Briefly.
If aid corridors are open, it will make an immense difference. It will mean thousands of people that are not accessing humanitarian aid will have access. It will mean many malnourished children will have access to life-saving nutrition supplies. It will mean many schools that were destroyed by the war will have to rebuild, and many children who are traumatized will have to access to protection services and facilities. So it will really make a difference if this deal is reached and if humanitarian corridors are open. I just came back from Rank. Rank is a border between Sudan and South Sudan, and even though it's a slightly lesser in terms of capacity, having a free access to move supplies back and forth will save life.
Well, on that note, I want to thank you very much indeed on this World Humanitarian Day, and also once again to thank you and congratulate you for the work that you've been doing. Maulid Wafa is a senior emergency specialist with UNICEF, and he was talking to me on the line there from Istanbul.